You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hey.
Hello. I'm laughing at the sound bites in your intro. I hadn't really paid attention to those before. Those are very cute.
Thank you. My favorite movies.
Yeah, those
the
are
movies
good.
that spoke to me as a woman. Hey, everybody. It's Renee Steelman, the host of She Became Visible, and I am thrilled today to have as my guest Rebecca Bibliotheca. I feel like I should say that with some kind of Italian. Rebecca Bibliotheca. I don't know. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rebecca, and it's absolutely exhausting. Her bio. Rebecca is a mother of 3 boys, a co-founder of the Good Book Club, a virtual reading group for post and nuanced Mormons. She is the co-host of Mormon Media Reviews with Stephen Pinecker. She is the leader of the Mormon Stories Book Club and creator and co-host of Mormonish podcast. She is living a joyful life on the other side of Mormonism. She has a master's of library and information science from Brigham Young University and worked for many years at the BYU Library. She and her husband, Tom, also founded a youth theater program that is in its 19th year. Rebecca loves the theater, reading, film, spending time outdoors, church watching, and iced coffee. And can I say, Rebecca, except for the love, it's not that I don't love books, because I do love books. But I, until the invention of audiobooks, I probably was not able to read as many books as I wish I would have. But give me a good plane ride and a beach trip, and I could get a book down. But other than that, I was busy raising insane children. So, but with the advent of the invention of audiobooks, I am now like, I can honestly say I devour at least 1 book a week, and I love it. So I'm impressed with your biography. The only question I have is, how does a librarian / theater lover, I don't see those two coexisting. I just see that grumpy, quiet person shushing people and just avoiding all contact with real life. That's the stereotypical librarian. And
with hair up in a bun with the
yes,
pencil? Is that
yes.
what you're...
And you are nothing like the stereotypical librarian.
Well, maybe that's why after a decade or so, I ended my career at the BYU Library and went on to do something else. So yeah.
You're like, get me out of here. I
gotta talk. That is very true. So.
I gotta talk. And girl, are you talking? Let me tell you, you are. And I have to say, I found you on Stephen Pinecker's podcast.
Okay.
And I don't know if I ever remember anything that you said, because I was just so in I could not take my eyes off of you. Your smile, your energy, you're like this happy, bubbly person. And I just was like, wow, I want to be like her. I want to be happy. I want to be just joyful. You just come across as such a positive energy. That's what I'm trying.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Although I guess that doesn't do very well on the podcast if no one's listening to my words and they're just looking.
Well, that's true. And obviously I was. But I knew if Stephen had found you and was embracing you, that you
Right.
were an amazing thing. And And you are. And I also, I'm loving your book club. And can I tell you, I have twice joined a book club and twice went to one meeting and then left. And the reason was because I don't like fiction. I usually, I love historical fiction,
Right.
but I really prefer biographies, autobiographies, historical things, because I am fascinated with how things happen and real people function. So I went to this one book club, and the first book was a fiction book, and I read it. And so we were all sitting around, and these ladies were like dissing the characters, and I was like, you guys all know they're not real, right?
They don't exist.
They don't exist. And so we don't really need to get on her case that much because she wasn't a live person. You know what I mean? And I just couldn't handle the emotion that was being put in these characters, instead of just talking about the storyline or where it came from or something like that. So I've never done, and plus I don't like being assigned a book thing, especially the last 3 years while I've been deconstructing. Of course, I'm obsessed with Mormon history, and I don't want to read anything else. So I'm just now coming out of my other skin and going, I think it's ready. I'm now doing just world history. I'm now doing like, well, okay, I'm done with this, and I'm done with the New Testament with Bart Ehrman, and I think I'm ready to delve into Roman civilization. That's kind of where I'm at.
No, and that's a trajectory. In the Good Book Club that I started about 2.5 years ago, that's exactly what it was. At first, we'd always sample our members, what would you like to read? And it was a lot of post-construction Mormon books. We were reading Rough Stone Rolling or things like that. And then as we went along, exactly what you said. Now we're reading philosophy, history. Today you actually attended, and it was a science book. It was a book on astrophysics. Some would say, what does that have to do with Mormonism? Well, the Good Book Club, it's through the lens of Mormonism. So, we're learning everything about the universe. And then we're also discussing, well, when we were growing up, what did we learn? It was mostly the biblical creation. So there's a hybrid there that just makes it fascinating and so interesting. So I think your trajectory sounds very similar to what a lot of people are on. They want to move on and read everything, kind of a re-education process.
Absolutely. It honestly is. If you ever saw the, golly, now it's getting right. What was the Tina Fey storyline where the girl was kept in a bunker and and I feel like that's what's happened, is that somebody let us out of the bunker and we're walking around going, wow,
what?
You mean what? And so, like you said, even today, it's like, I'm not a Neil deGrasse, fan. I don't really, but listening to your book club, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
If anybody ever, I can now go, oh, I know what you're talking about. That's what education is all about. You get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And now you're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I heard something about that. And so you can contribute,
Exactly. And you're free to explore whatever it is you want, because I always felt like within the church, you did a lot of reading, but it was very controlled. It was your lesson manual, or it was your patriarchal blessing, or it was your come follow me. There's a lot of reading, the scriptures, but you may not have time, and you may subtly not be encouraged to explore some of these other things that may, like you said, just unleash and open your mind.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that you mentioned today in the book club, and first of all, let me see if I can find this. I'm going to try something new and different. Let me see if I can do this, because I want to show. I tried to, but I couldn't get it to turn into a PDF. So let me see if I can find, would like to, whatever. Okay. Nope. Okay. Let me see. Nope. And there. Can you see that?
Let's see.
No.
Oh, you know what I do? Well, no, I don't. I see.
Okay.
Something. I'm not sure.
Okay. Oh yes, it's over here, and I can't get it to go bigger. All right.
Okay,
well,
that's probably what it is.
All right. We'll practice with it later.
I got to put my reading glasses on to see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was a sample of your podcast with the Mormonish.org.
Oh, okay.
And it's beautifully done. And I also wanted you to talk a little bit about that. And you have a co-host. And so tell me a little bit about your podcast. Your book club, you can join on Facebook. So it's the Good Book Club, right?
It is the Good Book Club. That's
right. And you find that on Facebook.
Yep.
And I do want to tell people that there is primarily ex-Mormons or nuanced Mormons on this book club. But as you mentioned, the books are going to be exploding into very diverse areas. So
Exactly.
don't be
Through the
afraid.
lens of Mormonism is what we say.
Right. And one of the gentlemen mentioned, I forget how he phrased it, but just again, the ability to open our eyes into even scientific explanations for things. It sounds so stupid. You would think in 2023, you're like, what? You had to get permission. You're like, yes, we did.
No, like you said, in a bunker, right? Yeah.
Yes.
People don't understand unless they do understand. So
Right. But one of the things that you said was that your father is a nuclear physicist.
yes, that is true.
Your mother
Yes.
was also what was her?
Master's in zoology. Yes. they were
Okay. All right.
scientific.
Zoology, which means we're
Yeah.
doing biology, we're doing
Yeah,
creation,
yeah.
we're doing genetics.
Yep.
And you grew up with a biblical understanding of the creation.
That's
That
exactly
blew
right.
my mind.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Yep. It blows my mind to this day. And the only thing that and they're still living and they're wonderful people. And the only thing I can attribute it to is just compartmentalizing, that part of their world was scientific, and then they never used those same criteria that they were, in their professional lives to scrutinize maybe some of the other organizations they were a part of. But yeah, it's compartmentalization. And I think we see that. It is very interesting.
And I think what I loved about that the most was that people assume that if someone is well-educated, highly trained, highly respected, that anything that they believe in is doctrine. And of course, obviously I'm using President Nelson as an example. The man's a heart surgeon. He's a renowned heart surgeon. He knows life, if he obviously he has to be the prophet. He's a heart surgeon.
Right.
And it's like I get, and I also see from that same logic, people who feel a little bit angry that they think that because they do have a testimony and a belief of a fundamental religion, that people think they're stupid.
Yeah.
And so there's those two educational things. It's like, okay, it is hard to believe, but on the other hand, there are nuclear physicists that probably talk to other scientists and go, are you stupid? Do you not see this? I mean, it's just a confirmation bias and compartmentalizing exactly what you said, but
it really is.
But at least what they did give you was an encouragement to get educated.
Absolutely. That was absolutely completely emphasized in my home. And that's true. But as I also mentioned in book club, when I would go to school and learn some things and come home and talk about it, then there was always more of a church kind of a spin put on that. So, make sure that you learn, but then you also have this other side of it. So,
and I can see that. I love the book by Rabbi, I think it's Karchner, and he is a rabbi. He obviously believes in God. But he doesn't believe that God is, he doesn't believe in the everything happens for a reason theory, because he believes that God is our creator. He created the earth with natural laws. And so everything that you were talking about today in the book club, and even some of the people said, but God made this happen. Yeah. So, so you can still go back to that. You can still have a belief in God and still go, God made the Big Bang happen or whatever.
Exactly.
But what you said, and this is where I want you to start your story, but you said, I've always been a critical thinker. And I think that comes from your family dynamics that perhaps
it probably does.
Yeah. So talk about how you grew up, you had educated parents, but they also taught you the gospel. Everything went back to a God. But you growing up still were times when you were like,
Well,
that's
true. That's very true. And that's why my story, I feel, is a little different from others, because if you've heard the term PMO, which was physically in, mentally out, I feel I have been PMO since birth. I mean, honestly. So I don't have those shelf-breaking moments. I don't have that kind of a story, because I was raised in such an Orthodox Mormon way, meaning that, no television, homemade clothes, eating food storage. The church was the center of all social interaction for us. We were mainstream Mormons, but I call it Orthodox Mormon. That's kind of my own little term, but somebody that's living it, to the nth degree kind of a thing. And I think that because, I don't know, just for me, it was so extreme, I just never really was on board. I was in it. I did everything. I attended all the time. I was raised in it, and there were wonderful times, and I never thought twice about everything I was doing, because I think, and maybe this will make sense to some of you, but some of you it might, I didn't really know I could do anything else. Being raised as a young woman in the 70s and 80s church, which was actually really fun for me, great activities, great friends and everything. Went to BYU, married in the temple. Even though I never really was on board or believed it, I didn't know I could do anything else.
Right.
Which is, I don't know, can you at all relate or understand?
I can 100% relate to that, because like I said, I remember even before the COVID happened and you had time to listen and do other things. I remember saying to myself, I'm not reading the Doctrine and Covenants anymore. This is something's off here. It just, every revelation seems to enhance Joseph Smith's life somehow. And it was I couldn't get past Martin Harris conveniently being like, hey, I just received a revelation. You need to finance your farm.
Yep.
And hey, I just received a revelation. Everybody build me a house. And I mean, even then I was like, I'm just not going to read this anymore. This isn't, but like you, never occurred to me that Joseph Smith was, it's that cognitive dissonance. It's where you're like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
I'm feeling a little con man here, but that can't be true. So we're just going to move on.
Yeah, we're just going to move on.
And that's the proverbial shelf, right? Yeah.
No, so you can relate to that. And I always found ways to be on the outside of it, even though I was in it, like showing up after sacrament meeting was over, but pretending I'd been there, wasn't to talk, and then rush off to my primary calling.
The theater, that's where your theater comes in.
I did not want to do it. I did not want to be there, but family's in, everybody's in, and I just didn't know how not to do it. And then I think I reached a point, and honestly, I believe that it was age related. I was 55 when literally one Sunday morning, I woke up and I just said, and at that point, I was a primary pianist. I had pretty much just relocated myself to, I'm like, okay, I don't want to teach. I will play the piano. I enjoy that. I'll be there with the kids. That's fine. Like this little tiny corner in the church. But I woke up and I just said, I really don't want to go. I don't want to go back. And I almost gave myself permission as a 55-year-old woman finally to say, you know what, you can not go, you can control your own destiny. I know it sounds really silly, and especially probably sounds silly to younger women, but it was very different to be raised in the 60s, 70s, and 80s church. You just had a different mindset, and you didn't understand that you were in control all the time. So I made that decision. I sent a friendly text to the primary presidency. I said, you know what, I think I'm just going to be taking a break. And literally the next week, COVID happened full. So nobody really knew.
That worked out really well.
I know that it wasn't just COVID, as it was for so many people, that I had that epiphany moment where I kind of took back some of my power and control and just said, for once, I'm just going to do something that I want to do. So, and then of course, COVID gave everyone the chance, to step back and to relax. And that's kind of how, so then COVID's happening, and I start getting involved in post-Mormon social media just to see, well, what are other people that have left doing? And I noticed that a lot of them were reading like what you described, and they were posting about books they were reading, and I was reading, and I had my background in librarianship. So I started making posts about books, and then somebody, just a random Reddit stranger, said, well, why don't you start a post-Mormon book club virtual? All of us are languishing at home with COVID. Why don't you start a book club? And I said, well, okay. And I didn't have any idea how to go about it, like the whole virtual side of it. I'm not super techie, right? But then some other people on Reddit, again, strangers, started chiming in, well, hey, I'm really good at running, Zoom meetings, and I can host this and that. So this wonderful man named Bruce Christensen from California said, I can help you with that. And then someone else said, well, I like to correlate data and put together lists. I help you organize books. And that turned out to be Landon Brophy, who became, these three are pretty much the co-founders. And then I'll tell you this is interesting. There was another person that was instrumental, messaging back and forth and helping set up the book club. He's never been able to attend or be a part of it in 2.5 years because the rest of his family, wife, children, are in so he could never do it. Isn't that funny? So there's like this shadow co-founder, which really speaks to everyone's story, right? Some people just can't participate. So We got it off the ground 2.5 years ago and just invited everybody virtually. We, post things on Post-Mormon social media and say, come read with us. And it's just been absolutely amazing and completely fun. I think on our rolls, we have, about 350 members. And like you saw, we'll have like 30, 35 people that Zoom in because it is second Saturday. We do ask people to give up one Sunday a month.
Yeah.
And we understand that's hard. So
Yeah.
you definitely, come join us as you can. And some people simply like our reading list, they like to just
yes.
what we're reading. They can't necessarily, attend for various reasons. One of our first meetings, a woman Zoomed in and she seemed to be in the dark kind of. And I said, well, hi, nice to meet you. And she said, I'm in my closet, literally in her closet. She said, my husband is getting our kids ready for church. And I just I need some, someone, a community. I need some help. I need, and we were just like, oh my gosh. So we feel like we read and we just love to get to know people and embrace people and help them at whatever point they're at. And so it's been really, really, really interesting. And so because Landon, my co-founder of the book club, and I like to just talk about different stuff and different issues, we thought, well, it'd be fun to start a podcast talking to people who are maybe nuanced Mormons or post-Mormons who are doing wonderful things on the other side of it. You hear a lot about the trauma and that's extremely real. But also you hear about people that are thriving, in a wonderful way or have sort of focused their energies on something specific. And so we created Mormon-ish, living a joyful life on the other side of Mormonism. And Mormon-ish means this is our huge philosophy is that we're all still Mormon. We may be post-Mormon, but we were raised Mormon. We were culturally Mormons. Our parents are Mormons. Our children are Mormons. I have a child on a mission right now. So we're all still part of the community and we can all be together and get along. And so we have just wonderful guests on. We're small. We're just starting, we're just learning how to do it. But it's been we've gotten a good reception and good feedback. And so it's just been really fun to try to give back to the community. And that's kind of like what you're doing, right? Exactly what you're doing. It's
I really want, and I love that there is a time, and I do have so much admiration for these women who at the age of 30 or 33 and are able to go, wait, what? And I do think it's a generational thing. And I was just trying to find, because I was listening to a Mormon Stories episode, and John had just interviewed a doctor that has just written a book on non-verts, Christianity and people that have never had a religion or are leaving religion. And why can't I find it? Every time I turn on my stuff, it automatically pops up. But of course, now it's not ever going to pop up.
I'm that way too. Scrolling through my phone. I know I have this. I know.
It's like, I was just listening to it for Pete's sake. Every time I try to turn it on, it just, But anyway, he was saying, and this was fascinating to me. He was talking about the eras and where Christianity fell in the eras. And also, and this is what was fascinating about it. I got to find it because I got to give this guy credit for his work. He was talking about, and it reminded me of the idea that the Mormon church is an American church.
Absolutely.
And so much of the thinking, the programs, the correlated materials, everything is based around American thought, American everything. And so he was saying how the idea that, so it was Dr. Stephen, Bibliotheca, Bullivant. I think it's Bullivant, Bullivant.
Yeah, that sounds right. Bullivant.
So he's written this book, Non-Verts, and he was just saying how the Cold War in America and the Cold War in England was completely different, because even though the baby boomers, my generation, the 50s and the 60s were just like this amazing era in America, they were still rebuilding in England. People were still going over rubble in the 50s, in the 60s. And so it wasn't as the whole World War II was not looked on as, this atheist who didn't have God in his life became a dictator who killed
Yeah.
10 million Jewish people.
Million,
I
yeah.
mean, no, it wasn't looked at like that. It was completely differently ideal. It was amazing. So I'm just saying that those of us that were raised in this different era and in American Christianity, it was a totally different concept of every family and our roles, our gender roles and everything. And so, some of us older people, like, and I'm old enough to, babysat for you,
I don't think so. I'm a boomer, actually. I'm the very
is that right?
year
Okay.
of boomer. Yeah, my children remind me all the time, and I have a younger son, and he says, "Okay, boomer," and I say, "Well, okay, zoomer." And then, will we ever be able to relate the boomer and the zoomer? I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, there was a thing where you played your role. Your family.
Sure.
But one of the things he said, he was on there with Nemo, but one of the things Nemo said, which I loved, he said, Americans, they all came from a different part of the world, and they're so proud of where they came from. And he says, it's so annoying because they just have to tell you, my ancestors came from Scotland, and they're like, we don't care, but they're trying to find a culture. And so we find our culture through, I'm a Mormon, I'm 7th generation Mormon. That's my culture. It's not just, it's my food. It's my hymns that I sing. It's my dentist and my doctor. And it's the Costco that I go to that has, food storage that doesn't, they don't have that in Ohio.
And all the Mormon books in the Costco, because it's a Costco, right?
So it's more, and I love what this Stephen guy, he said, you never see like an anti-Anglo English church podcast. People were like, I don't care whatever. I mean, unless, anyway, it was very interesting. But yes, so we, even though I do not go back 7 generations, my husband's does, though. His mother was an Orson Hyde, pioneer descendant. And so he can claim the generations back. Not me. No, we're Methodists. We're just good old Methodists. So I don't have that culture. I also never lived in Utah. But I have to tell you, I am sitting here at this desk looking out. We had to come to Utah for an event, and I'm looking out at these beautiful mountains. And I'm just like, okay, this place is beautiful. I have to say, it is beautiful.
And that's why I own the word Mormon too, because I have many great memories of growing up as a Mormon. I have a great love for a lot of things about it. And now I'm just doing something different. I've moved past that part, but that's still my heritage, my culture. The people around me are still involved. And so I feel like everyone can coexist. I hope,
And you mentioned that you have a son on a mission.
I do have a son on a mission.
And then your other 2 sons, where are they at in their beliefs?
So I have 3 sons. They're all young adult. My youngest is 18 on his mission. So my oldest is actually one of the reasons that I started maybe looking at the church in a different way. Like I said, I was just kind of sailing through, not really believing, trying to kind of just like be part of it very culturally and having fun with the cultural side of it. But when my oldest son was about 15, he had a lot of social anxiety, a lot of anxiety being at church because it's so high performance, especially I live in kind of a bubble inside a bubble inside a bubble in Utah County.
Woo.
Maybe some of you out there know where I'm talking about. But anyway, so there was just a lot of extreme, if your hair was slightly longer, you'd be told about it every second, just a lot of pressure. Other kids, it would just roll off. But my particular son, he internalized everything and had a lot of trauma around church. And I sort of saw it, but I, kind of blew it off. You're fine. Just go to your class. I'm sure they'll be fine. I wasn't really hearing him. And then one day I came home from church. He was 15 and he was sitting at the kitchen table and he was crying. When a 15-year-old boy is crying, there's something wrong. Like, he started having a panic attack and he said, Mom, they called me in. I had to go to a bishop's interview. I can't talk about this stuff. He was having those invasive questions and he was just, he couldn't do it. And that moment, sometimes it takes these moments to just go whoop and the eyes open. And I said, oh my goodness, to myself, I said, I think I'm going to have to choose between the mental health, physical health of my son and the church. And instantly I said, oh, you do not have to go. You don't have to go back. I said, you can go to activities if you want. Your friends are there, but you do not ever have to go on Sunday again if you don't want to. And he was just like, really? I mean, he probably never imagined that and I can imagine there are some parents that would not say that, unfortunately, but I instantly saw the damage. It just really, really showed me right there at that moment. And so then, he would go to some activities, but he would stay home every Sunday. So then I'd be at church and I'd be like, oh, oh, my little guy's at home. Maybe I'll go home and watch some TV with or something. So I started taking a little bit of step back just to be with him, which is a very legitimate reason, right? You don't want your kids
Absolutely.
alone. And so yeah, so that kind of gave me a little space, and I started seeing, now my middle son, church worked extremely well for him. He had an incredible experience. He's a return missionary. He's as active as can be, in a singles ward, and he loves it, and it works perfectly for him. So that's great.
Interesting.
So I, like a lot of people, have a variety, right? I have an older son that's been out since he's 15, and then I have, the two that are very much in, and we all get
Okay.
along as a family. There are certainly things that we don't talk about a lot together because we all understand that we have different points of view.
Right.
And so, but I think we do a pretty good job of just, all getting along together. But I know family dynamics are just rough. And I hear some
Right.
stories that you just shake your head and it's so tragic,
Right. Right.
But I don't know. I
Well,
also haven't faced, none of my sons are married yet.
yeah.
I have not faced will my more active sons, when they marry and have children, what will that be? Will they don't go to Grandma Rebecca's house? She might
Yes.
have a mug of tea. I mean, do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
that's making light of it, but it's not. These
Right.
are real issues with so many people. And I have not reached that point yet. So maybe I'm just in a happy little plateau.
Right.
Maybe there may be more coming, I think. So
Right. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I do think that everybody, I don't know why I have to learn things the hard way. I mean, it's kind of like, wow, can't I just read a book and accept these things and grow
Right.
from no, I have to actually
You have to
experience and then,
experience it.
yeah, get hit over the head. But because it wasn't until I left the church that my second son, who like your son, he was a much more introvert,
Mhm.
and always had one really good friend. And he never was a big crowd person. He did track, so it wasn't a group thing. It was a
Right.
let me
On
go
his
do
own.
this.
Yep.
Right. And that was his personality. And then when he went off to college, then we were like, all right, you're all right, go to Oregon State. You can go to Oregon State, but you got to go to church. Be sure and go to church. Well, he wasn't going to church. So we're like, well, now you got to go to BYU. I'm sorry. If you're not going to church, then you're going to have to go to BYU. And we forced him to transfer from Oregon State to BYU. And I did not understand the college system. I did not understand that he lost over a year of credits, that he was, majoring in international business. He had won the, Future Business Leaders of America for the high school in state competition. He was on his way. And he ended up graduating from BYU with a degree in psychology because that was where he could throw his credits and get out of there the fastest. And he never went. We just were sure. We were just sure that if he went to BYU, he would then go on a mission.
Right.
And, because that's what his patriarchal blessing said, that he would be a leader and blah, blah, blah. And then we've had some family stuff happen lately. And so we've been going through boxes, the children's boxes, their memory boxes and their pictures. And I found all of these acceptance letters for my third son for baseball. If, we'd love to have you come and play for us. We'd love to have you come and play for us in, Virginia, South Carolina, all these different programs. And I just wanted to melt because we were like, there's no way you're going out to Virginia. You're no way you're going to Dixie College and play baseball with the Mormon kids. And you're going to get a testimony, daggone it. And now these boys, they are so wonderful because they're looking at me and they're like, oh, now you've left the church. Oh, really? Now you've seen the light. And I've been like, you know what I could have done with a baseball scholarship, and I'm just like,
goodness.
And talk about failing as a mother. I'm just like, why didn't I support you in your dreams?
But you were conditioned and trained to do what you did. The most important thing was not the scholarships or the education. It was the spiritual side of it. You needed to make sure they stayed close to the church. You needed to make sure that they had a testimony. You were thinking about the next life, not this life. And we all do that or did that. And so it's legitimate what you did. So do you apologize to them, or what do you say? I mean, is it just kind of funny that
they're so wonderful because they say, oh no, Mom, it was great. It really taught me a lot. I really learned, and you can always find your tribe. I mean, he went out to BYU and found an entire tribe of guys that were there because their parents made them go there. And so, he followed all the rules because that's the way he is. he shoved his hair underneath his, hat when he graduated, so they
to.
didn't
Yes,
see
you
his
do.
long hair, and he got his degree and got out of there, and he is a successful businessman in spite of his mother, but a performance religion is toxic.
Yeah.
It is so toxic. And I'll go on this in another podcast, but what it does is it's not benign. It is not benign when you're living a performance type of religion. Now, I love one of the things you said, though, because there's that saying out there that the only people that tell the truth are drunks and children. Tell the story of how your kid outed you.
Oh, yeah, this is true. So my youngest son, he pretty much primary age just kind of gravitated away and did not go back. And then as a senior, he started getting involved with, TBM, True Believing Mormon girls and their families. And, he just reconnected with the church. He just got back involved. My husband and I did not see this coming. We keep saying we weren't watching the store, but for him, it seemed to work very well. So all of a sudden he starts going to mission prep and to seminary and to institute. We're like, what is happening? Yeah, it was really funny. But these girls were so nice,
Yes.
That's a whole nother issue too, how girls, anyway, how they kind of train the girls to, it's another issue. Yeah, it is. So, but for my son, it worked. And, he had these wonderful girlfriends and their families that embraced him. So he decided to go on a mission, which is, it's his choice, whatever he's going to do. But so we, of course, don't attend our ward, my husband and I, but he all of a sudden started attending, showing up. So here's this young man sitting there alone.
This kid, how's your mom doing?
Yeah, no, and I have to tell you, I'm very good and have always been very good at just sort of being around it. I don't know if a lot of people recognized that my husband and I really were not attending at all. I think they thought, no, and I think a lot of people
only in Utah.
Only in Utah. Yes, only in Utah. And, post-COVID, maybe they're at another ward or maybe they haven't done this, or I think I saw them. It just doesn't, and, people are involved in their own lives. So I believe that most people did not really realize that I had taken an actual step away. And so, but now here's my son, who they haven't seen for a long time, sitting there alone. And that makes them go, well, where's your parents? So if they were wondering then, they stopped wondering when he started bearing his testimony every past Sunday and going, so even though it's hard and I'm home in my pit, he's so cute. He's just our son.
Mom's drinking coffee.
Yeah, exactly. No, he didn't do it intentionally, but yeah, it was very funny. So we were kind of outed, and then we definitely noticed, that people treating us a little different because in their defense, they don't know what, they don't know, how you are or what you are. Are you really angry? Are you antagonistic? Are you going to bite their head off? No, I'm not going to. I'm the same person I've always been.
Yeah.
Most people don't know. I feel no different now, I think, than I felt since I was 3 years old. Honestly, I've always just been around it and in it and just kind of surviving and functioning. So yeah, it was kind of cute that he did that. He didn't mean to do it, of course. He was just telling his story, and that was it. But our ward was so supportive of him and just so encouraging and so happy that he's on his mission. And now that he's out there, they're writing him and they're sending him things. So it's wonderful for him. And that's what Mormons do extremely well is if it works for you, it works so well. And it's such a wonderful community and they're so supportive, if it works for you, that's fine. So, and that's what I mean by saying I have joyful memories, happy memories, growing up, all that kind of thing, community and service. And so that's fine. And then there's a point maybe where you're just not comfortable with it anymore and you move past it a little bit, but you're still very involved. So the question you hear all the time, and I'm sure you hear this too, and on your different podcasts that, how come you can't leave it alone? That idea, and it's like, because it's me. You can't take it out of me. It's in every fiber of my being, right?
Right.
Like they say.
Well, and there are so many, just protocol things and a lot of it is my generation. A lot of it is the church where these little boys are dressed up in white shirts and ties and suits. And we had a young men's advisor that I just loved. He was like he was the etiquette champion of the ward. And so he was the young men's president for 100 years. And those little boys, they weren't wearing khakis and white shirts. They were in suits. He made it very clear that you will wear a suit to pass the sacrament. And I will buy you a suit if your parents can't afford it. I will make sure you have a suit. And he taught the boys to pull out a woman's chair and to stand up when
Oh,
they go into a
wow.
room. And so there was all of this stuff that no longer exists in the world.
Yep.
And so now, as a Mormon, you see people, they dress up, they know how to dress for a funeral, they know how to dress for a wedding. And so you go out into the world, and even in podcasts, I look at podcasts and I'm like, that was like, hey, I'm going to go on a nationwide #1 podcast and you're in a t-shirt. I mean, like, you couldn't have thrown on a little sweater or something, because that's how the Mormons talk. Oh no, you dress
Yeah.
up for this. And
You're
even if
dressed up.
and so there's things like that. And also the niceness, the politeness. Oh, that we've lost our ability to say, I'm so sorry, I just ran into you.
Right.
But you
Yeah.
learn that at church. And the other thing that this Dr. Stevens said on, and I don't know why I'm promoting John DeLyn's stuff. He says, throw it back here, John. But anyway, but he was just saying how other Christians would study the church, and they're like, how do they get these young men to devote 2 years? They would actually like, this is fun. And then John interrupted and said, not only do they convince them to go, but they pay for it. They convince them to pay for it.
They pay for it and they go. That's right.
And so it's always been like, whatever, if the Mormons can do it, there must be a secret we can do it. And now that the Mormon church is bleeding and hemorrhaging, they're kind of like, oh, okay. But it is an absolute, the structure is amazing. It is amazing. But so that leads me to, that kind of answers my question before I even asked it. You've chosen not to resign your membership, but you're
Not yet.
just
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. And one of the main reasons, I think, is my parents. They're
Yeah.
elderly and they do genealogy all the time. They're on family search. They go to tithing settlement.
Oh,
There are these touch points where they would be made aware, and at
yes.
this point, they really wouldn't understand most of the things that I'm talking about. And
Exactly.
I'm fine going when I visit them and talking about, all things more, because that's another reason, can't leave it alone, because your family, you have to know what's going on so you can talk to your family members,
Absolutely.
right? You have to. So yeah, I have not resigned yet. I mean,
Yeah.
and someday I may. I don't know. I think,
Yeah.
my younger son, who's on this mission now, like I said, he didn't know a ton about how the church worked because he kind of stepped away at primary and came back. And during a couple of weeks ago when we were chatting on the P Day, he had all of a sudden learned about what membership records were. And
Oh.
he goes, have you, very concerned, which it almost literally broke my heart. Have you
Oh.
removed those? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And he's like, well,
Oh.
don't, because I want to be
Oh.
with you. I know it almost makes me, because
Oh.
now he's learned. And this is the thing. Now he never thought about it before, that he wouldn't be with me or the rest of his
Oh.
family later. Now he's learned that, he's
Oh.
learned
Yeah.
that in the construct that he's in, he may not be with me. And I said, nope, we will, whatever's next, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever dimension, whatever the afterlife, no, we'll be together. Don't, I had to reassure him, but that just struck me. He was not aware of that before. And
Yeah.
on his mission, he has now learned that, yes, that's a reality if mom and dad are living a different kind of life and not doing those things. So, and
Yeah.
it makes me think of missionary work in general, how missionaries will go to a family and say, a family who always assumed they'd be together in the next life, and
Yeah.
say, well, no, you won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a giant takeaway. But yeah, that particular moment was a little, emotional for me.
Right.
Because it's very hard to be on that side of it when you know that you're hurting your children just simply by existing and doing what you're doing. And,
Right.
there has to be that fine line. You want to be true to yourself, but you want to be sensitive. You're a mother. So, and I'm sure most of your listeners understand, they're either sandwiched in the middle like I am, or they're on either
Right.
end of it. And every situation is different. But
Yeah.
I think if we all just love each other, there's really got to be a way that we can all just exist. And
Right.
I also know that concern for post-Mormons most of the time comes from love. Just like my son, they are so worried and so devastated that you may not be with them later. It really
Right.
does. It's like tough love, right?
Right.
You have to
Right.
treat somebody tough now so that you can hopefully, be together later. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic.
It is an interesting dynamic, and as you mature and you go through different experiences in your life, we in a future podcast I'll be talking about what my family and I have just gone through. But one of the things I said to my husband is, and I have noticed this. I mean, he already was getting a lot of sympathy. He is also a true believing member.
Oh,
Just a wonderful man with a testimony that is just basic and true, but it absolutely does not matter as far as I'm concerned. He loves me. I could decide to, tattoo my face and he'd go, well, it wasn't my choice, but okay. I mean, he's just so, just example of what love is. And it breaks my heart for women whose husbands have deserted a family over something as simple as a membership in a religion. But anyway, but now, and I'll jokingly say to him, hey, I'm just going to pop into church with you every once in a while, just to let all the widows know in the ward that we haven't brought back polygamy.
Yeah, there is that thought.
Back away,
Protect your turf.
Yeah. But because so he's already getting a lot, and he finally admitted to me one day, I'm like, do people feel sorry for you? Because you're such a good man that you've got this terrible wife. And he's like,
running a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, but to the thought that we will not be together as a family, I'm sure there are people thinking that poor man, he's lost his wife, he's lost a child, and they won't be, and he'll be with him, but not with her. And and I'm just like, that is the saddest knowledge, if you honestly believe that,
And I think that is the belief, and that drives the behavior, it really is. It's like those old quotes where, we'd rather see you come home in a pine box than do something that would jeopardize your immortal, I mean, that's it to the extreme. And you see shunning in families, but I like to think, that it's just because, it's from a place of love that you really want to see them again. So
it is. And it's an interesting, and that's a whole nother, like I said, a whole nother podcast.
All of these things are a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Because he is such a good man. He has a friend who's not a member of the church, but he's really into genealogy. And so he asked my husband if he would look something up for him. So we're out here in Utah. He goes, yeah, I'll go over to the library and ask a question. So this old lady that's over there at the library, he said, hey, I'm for a friend. I was trying to find this, Irish something. And she was able to find one little thing, but it really wasn't that helpful. But anyway, she goes, do you think this will convert him? Do you think he's going to join the church? And my husband was like, no. No, it's not. He doesn't. He's aware. He's got lots of Mormon people around him. He just likes genealogy. But it's that was the mindset, right? You could not bring in your neighbor's garbage can without going, did you like that? Want to come over for family home evening? You think that, so it's like, okay.
It's that hidden agenda, I think that Mormons are accused of having. And I don't think it's even a real thing. I think it's just maybe just subconscious, I don't know.
It's not malicious. It's not,
they hope.
They do.
And I think that's why, like when people finally figured out that I had kind of stepped away, they didn't quite know how to act, even though really I'm not acting any different, and I've really, I consider myself having been out for quite a while, but when you're just getting that news right away, where do you fall in your family? Do you have brothers and sisters? I have one younger sister who's 3 years younger. So it's just my parents and the two girls, how we were raised. So yeah. And she's also a very critical thinker. I'd say she's more of a nuanced, Mormon. And she's one of the few people, one of the actually probably maybe the only still faithful Latter-day Saint that actually knows where I stand and has actually asked me some very real questions, and we didn't always have that relationship growing up, but as adults we do. And it's interesting to me when she'll say to me, so just kind of matter of factly, so do you believe in God? No one's ever asked me that. I mean, obviously in the book club, places like that, Mormonish, we talk about these issues all the time. I'm comfortable. I'm in a confirmation bias bubble, right? With my post-Mormon friends. So we talk about it, but to have my, faithful, true believing sister ask me that, and I said, no, here's where I stand. I'm more agnostic. I'm this and that, she's like, oh, okay. No judgment. So she's an absolutely amazing person.
So you don't have to worry about her telling your parents or some neighbor saying, hey, I saw Rebecca at the grocery store and she had on shorts.
Like that. No, Well, it is interesting because I feel there are certain ways to let your neighborhood, especially in Utah where everybody's on top of each other, know. One of them is how I dress, right? If I go to Walmart like this, no, it's a very simple, do you know what I mean? And like I said, I was very good at kind of covering up for years. I decided to only wear workout clothes. Let's see, after I stopped working at the BYU library, I moved to a new area and came home to raise my little kids. And I was like, I can't do this anymore with the I said, you know what? And I wasn't brave enough to do this. So I said, I'm just going to start wearing workout clothes
Yeah.
nonstop. I think a lot of people do that. I know. So I had the short sleeve,
Yeah.
but everyone's like, oh, she's probably just on her way to the
Yeah.
gym from 7 a.m. to 10.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
Like,
fine,
wow. I didn't know Rebecca was a gym rat, but dang,
Yeah.
every time I
Yeah.
see her, she's in
That is
Lululemon.
how I did it. And then after my kids were older, like junior high and high school age, I did go back to work kind of part-time. And of course, then I'm dressing and for everyone's faithful in the office where I work. And so I knew I couldn't wear any kind of a work clothes that would, so
Right.
I would do this, and I know people will judge me and think, gosh, she's living such a double life, but everybody's
Yeah.
working it out. So I would
Yeah.
wear a regular shirt to work, but as soon as I would get off of work, I would run in the bathroom. I would take that off. I'd put on what I'm more comfortable in, this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and go on and run my errands. So, whatever that is, being a chameleon, I'm not
Right.
sure, but
Right.
and there, I don't. You just can't judge anyone for where they're at or what they're doing or what they're trying to do. Everyone's
No.
on this path, and nobody knows where they've been or what kind of a family experience they have. And so and I've learned that with the book club, just coming in contact with so many people. I had never really met anyone in a mixed faith marriage before. My husband's always been very nuanced. And now that I gravitated much farther away, he's done the same with me. But in the book club, there are literally people, like I said, the closet woman, right? Her husband,
Right.
faithful, taking the family. She can't let him know that she might
Oh.
be involved in some kind of a group. And so I've seen a lot. I've seen your situation where an extremely supportive, faithful husband who will just come in and say, hey, you got your book club today? All right, we'll see you, honey. And
Yeah.
head off to church. I've seen other women who are like, okay, I don't think I can stay very long because he'll be home from church soon. It's just, and the opposite too, husbands and the wives on the other side. So there's just a lot of dynamics at play. And I think we all just have to be forgiving to each other, and everyone's trying the best they can in or outside of the church. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it did take an outside force. I mean, he did have to go to a counselor, but he only went a couple of
Right.
times, and he needed someone who was a member of the church, but a nuanced member of the church. And she works as a counselor in the Arizona area. She's amazing. And she needed him to say to her, is that the only thing you guys have in common? So you don't share anything else besides a belief in a religion? Yeah. And he's like, well, no. It just goes, well, let's talk about what you have in common. What do you share? What do you guys love to do together? And it took that for someone to open up his eyes and go, oh yeah, wait a minute, that we've got a great life we've built together for 40 years.
And all your wonderful children. And then I think you just have to be able to kind of let go of the afterlife and go,
right.
What will happen will happen.
Exactly.
And just have confidence. It's going to work out. I'm going to be with the person I love, but some people can't do that because, they're very conditioned that there are very specific criteria to get into heaven, or, the celestial kingdom and be together. And if your family members aren't meeting those, then you got to use some tough love. I have an interesting story from college where I was dating a guy who was iffy about a mission, but he decided to go. And so we went through the whole farewell. We did everything. He went into the MTC. This is in the early 80s, so a very long time ago. And he decided in the MTC that it was not for him. He could just tell. And he made the decision. He goes, this is not for me. I'm just, it's not that I don't even not believe in the church. I just know that this mission is not for me. I'm not going to do it. And so I was going to BYU at the time. He was in the MTC, and he got permission to call me, and he said, I'm coming out. I'm coming home. And his family called me right away and said, okay, we've disowned him. You need to disown him. Don't talk to him. Don't give him money. Don't help him. We've got to force him back in, And this is a very loving family of this boy. But in their mind, they got to save him. Something very desperate has happened. His soul is on the line,
They didn't blame you.
No, they didn't blame me at all.
That's good,
they wanted to make sure that I also shunned him so that he would have no one to turn to. And being very alone, the only place he had to go was back to the MTC.
Right.
So I, of course, was like, no, no. And I loaned him some money. We helped him find an apartment. He got a midnight job. He struggled to get back into school, and eventually, just by him being himself and going through school and being successful, his family, came around, and it was fine. But I'll just never forget that it was just kind of like a given on their part. And you're going to disown him too, right? Because we're all on the same page. We need to get him back. And interesting, this guy married in the temple. He has kids. He's active Mormon.
No.
Yeah, isn't that funny? So
That's
it wasn't.
amazing.
He just knew a mission wasn't for him, and that's okay. But that was a very interesting lesson to me because I knew the family was a very nice family. I knew they loved him, But the way they showed their love is they had to force him back in. So,
Right.
which is
That's
interesting.
so interesting. And I think it goes, all the stories, like, me forcing my kids to go to an LDS college and them shunning their kids.
Yeah.
These were all approved, tough love. This
Tactics.
is how these are the tactics that we were
Yeah.
taught and believed in.
Yeah.
And so if people do not believe in a cult like program, and you've got to look at the programming that was done, that you went, I will do that
Yeah.
with your own beautiful children. And
Yes.
it's amazing, because I'm like you. It's like, I have one daughter who is still in the church, extremely nuanced. She knows everything, but she's just got 4 kids. It's a great way to raise kids. I will
It
tell
is.
you, you've got little kids, stay in the
Yep.
church. It's fabulous. You just
You
got
have
to
a
bring them
village,
home.
that's for sure. Yeah.
You got to
really do.
deprogram them every Sunday
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
few things, but generally, the deacon program, they'll find their little buddies anyway.
Yeah.
And and I forgot where I was even going with that, but
Your
where was I
daughter,
going?
your daughter stayed in, and she's
Yeah. Oh,
nuanced.
so
Your
I like, hey,
relationship with her.
if my kids, if my grandchildren grow up and they get married in the temple, I'll be standing outside that temple, or I'll be back at the, reception place doing their flowers.
Exactly.
When my grandsons, if they go on missions, I'll be right there. We'll send them money.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like, this is great, for you. That's great for you. And they're not doing anything for me. I mean, at first, when I first got my first tattoo, it was years before I even left the church, but I was free, right? I was free
Right,
from being a
right.
grandma. I was free from being a mom. And we had moved to Arizona, and I was like, I can be me finally.
You're
I
like,
can
"I'm
finally
doing
get my
this.
tattoo.
Wow."
But I was covering it up with my shirts because I didn't want my
Yeah.
grandkids to see it.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to go, oh, Nana's lost her mind, And now I'm just like, whatever, guys. And they don't
Yeah.
care. It's no big deal. And so what a blessing. Like you said, I did not grow up in the bubble. I wasn't living in the bubble.
Right.
My kids are all very nuanced, so I didn't have to experience that.
Yeah.
My husband wasn't cheating on me, so that didn't give him an excuse to
Yeah.
leave. I've just had so many wonderful things that I have not had to experience that other
Yeah.
people have. So,
And so many have.
for people to stand up and decide to be themselves or whatever, everybody's story is different. Everybody's trial is different. Everybody's circumstances are different. Like I said, my family's all Methodist besides, my little Mormon, the few that my mom got to. So they don't care. That's no big deal to
Right.
them.
Yeah, that makes
Everybody's
a difference.
Yeah,
That makes
it
a
really
difference to have
does.
extended family and people that, could care
Yeah.
less whether you're in or out, and other people just have that pioneer stock going back. And
Yeah.
I always think it's so interesting that literally, I mean, if you wonder what you mean by high control or high demand, it's an organization that can literally, like you said, make you override a maternal instinct or
Yes.
anything, almost
Yes.
like I call it, my husband laughs at me, but I call it the Mormon lizard brain. It just kicks in at certain times, when you maybe hear something that you might feel threatened about, or, a child or isn't doing something, and you do something like that. Oh, we've got to shun him, or we've got to,
Right.
you normally wouldn't do that, you would not do
Yeah.
that to your child. But again, there's a higher purpose, and you really feel like it's something that you have to do, and you haven't thought it through. And I think that on the other side, if people leave, then like you said, oh, why do we send my kids to college? You see that, and you just have to say, I was doing the best I could at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm very sorry. And I've met different people in the book club who have different, like you said, all your kids know where you stand. They know everything, other people. So there were people in the book club that just said, yeah, when I left, I sat my kids down and I told them, I'm leaving. I have reasons and things. When you're ready, or if you're ready, you can come talk to me about it. So that's what they've said.
Right.
Other people have just gravitated away. This is more where I am. And their kids have no idea why. They don't really understand, because they don't even know enough about church history or things that they could even ask the questions. And so how do you even bring that up,
Right.
So these people, other people, myself included, are just like, no one really knows why. And then there are people that have said, I sat my family down and I read them my own CES letter. I told them every single little, the
letter to my wife. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. And I guess it depends on the individual family or what works, but those 3 ways are kind of the ways that I've seen: either tell everything, say nothing, or say, I have something to say, and if you'd like to hear it, you can talk to me. So it's kind of different.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful. And I love the fact that you explained that it really was, even though you were mentally out because you understood, it wasn't enough for you to go, I cannot sit in a chapel and listen to one more talk about Joseph Smith,
Yeah.
because
No.
I know now some
Yeah.
truths of what he did. That wasn't that you also were able to be a critical thinker enough to know, we're just going to skip past that. I'm going to go play
whatever. No, and that's why literally I haven't been going to church for decades. I've hid out in like primary, those different areas, just because I'm like, and when I say I was raised as an Orthodox Mormon, I'm not talking about polygamy, but I'm talking about I knew all those different things. My parents told me those stories. Polygamy. My parents told me you will be, a polygamist in the next life. That was explained to me. In fact, there's a very funny story. My husband and I met at BYU, and when my parents drove down to meet him when it was looking serious, we were engaged, and we sat down at dinner and we were chatting, and my mom said, "Oh, Rebecca, I'm just so thrilled for your marriage, upcoming marriage." And then she said to my husband, "And for you, Tom, of course, this is the only first of your many marriages." That's how closely they lived to, the idea and the concept. Yeah. And I remember Tom, my husband, was like, "What is she talking about?" And I go, "I got to get up and go to the bathroom." I mean, it was like a Frontier Pies. If you're older, you'll know what that is. And I'm like, threw my corn muffin down, and I just went, because that is the last thing a new engaged person wants to hear. You gotta think that in your religion that you're in, your spouse is gonna have other, it was just crazy. But for my parents, it was just fine. It was just what it was, and so they didn't mean any harm. But crazy stories like that. And I have tried to look at things like that just with humor, sort of, that kind of gets me through a little bit, because otherwise you are so traumatized you can't function. But different things work for different people, because I'm not making light at all. But for me, but that moment was funny. And my husband was just like, what kind of family am I marrying into? This is very
seriously. Do I have to?
Again,
does your family know something I don't know?
No, I know. Yeah. Because my husband's more, I was raised in Washington State. He was raised in California. So he's more like, whatever, I'm a Mormon. But okay. Now, no, I didn't mean that. No offense to any California viewers. I just meant
I don't want to hear any comments.
Yeah. They had a
we
much
don't
more
say
relaxed,
that.
No, it was a much more relaxed upbringing. So those things were not focused on, where in my upbringing they were. So it was just really interesting. But again, everybody meant well. Everybody was wonderful. They were just saying what was normal for them to say, and you take it the way it is. So
isn't that funny though? I think like Lindsay Hansen Park would say, everything goes back to polygamy. Everything, every doctrine goes back to polygamy. And it's funny because when you read The Ghost of Polygamy, and you realize that I for years, when my girlfriends and I would get together, we would say things like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like heaven. I just can't wait to go have 2 million babies." And, this is so fun, and we all said that. And we kind of were a little bit, I think we were a little bit like, holy crap, don't die. I don't want to die. But don't let
me,
you
don't think about it. You block it out. You just can't.
And my dad passed away. I said to my mom, I said, "Well, do you think he's got his other wives picked out already?" And he said, "Oh, absolutely not." I told him, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, you're a temple worker. You either believe, and see, that's my black and white thing. You either believe it or you don't believe it. And why do you not believe this, but you are standing on your ground on all these other things that they've said to you over the pulpit? And yet, and because I would say 90% of the women are like that. They're like, "Oh, please don't be true. Please don't be true."
Yeah, you just can't think about it. So no, it's actually very tragic. And that reminds me of another story. When I did work at BYU, there was a woman whose husband passed away quite suddenly, and we were all trying to be supportive and everything. And one day, a month or so later, she was crying at work, and so a couple of us went over to talk to her, and we're assuming that she's, just missing her husband. And so we're like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "It's not so much that he's gone. It's the fact that he's dating. He's picking out other women." She was dealing with jealousy and betrayal feelings for her husband, completely imaginary, but to her, very real. She really thought, because of how she understood it, that since he was now in the next world, that he was picking out women. And that's why she was, I'm like, oh my God, really? You need to have those feelings on top of actual legitimate mourning for your husband, which is what you should be doing, instead of this convoluted idea. So it's a real thing. And I think we saw it that time in conference. Remember, I think it was Elder Oaks read that letter, but who that woman was voicing a question that women who really understand what the new and everlasting covenant is. It's a real question, what about
Right.
the next life? And it was just like, oh, haha,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
keep not thinking about
Yeah.
it so that
Just
you can
don't
take
think
it
about it.
away.
It's not
Yeah,
important. But let me
don't
tell you
think
what you
about
do
it.
need to think about. You're
Yeah.
not going to the celestial kingdom if you are gay or lesbian or
I
that. We
know.
know. We know
No, I
that one for
know.
sure. But this one, don't
Oh,
worry about it.
there are
We don't,
so many
Yeah.
things like that where it's just so unnecessary that there's so much mental pain and trauma over something
Yeah.
that is not really what you think it is. But I don't
Right.
know.
Well, before
That's
you
rough.
go, tell me on your Mormonish podcast, what's your, because that's a fairly new podcast.
Oh
How many
yeah, I think we just dropped our 8th episode on
Okay.
Friday. We
Yeah.
drop it every Friday, and it's on YouTube or all your regular podcast platforms, or also just
Okay.
mormonishpodcast.org. You can find it. But
Okay.
we just tend to find people, that are post-Mormons or nuanced Mormons, and they're just doing really interesting. And for example, the episode that we dropped on Friday, it's a post-Mormon. His name is Bill Knowlton, and he started a clothing apparel line called Ally Parent Apparel, which is this
Oh.
amazing clothing to support the LGBTQ community. Because he said when we interview him, he's like, yeah, I wanted to get something because I have family members and some different situations that had come up. I wanted to show support. He's very concerned about like the suicide rates, that crisis and things like that. So he goes, I looked for shirts and things, and they were all like, maybe you wouldn't wear it to the office. Huge rainbow, which is whatever. He goes, I want to do something subtle. So he created these things that are just very positive messages. Be kind, love saves lives, and just very subtle little rainbows. I mean, things that you would wear anyway, but it also has a message. So we interview him, and tell everybody about this. And he's getting all these calls and interest. I'm like, this is so awesome. Pay it forward, right? It's just amazing. This thing is like, if I can wear a hat that has a little message or a little subtle rainbow on it and say to somebody, I see you, at whatever level you're ready to support. So anyway, guests like that. It's just been really
fabulous.
Fun. So, yeah. And I don't care if we get huge or not huge. I think somebody said, why are you involved in so many projects? I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I like what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I can't say no. And so I'm just going to keep doing it. I mean, you're probably the same way, all the different things that you're involved in. It's just really fun. And the people that you meet are just so amazing. So I never want that part of it to end. That's
exactly. Yeah. Well, you are amazing. And like I said, I have enjoyed talking to you so much. For the audience, Rebecca and I had to get to know you talk, and 3.5 hours later, not really.
I felt like we were
quite that long.
Sisters. No, we had a lot of similar, when you're a similar age, you have similar experiences. Yeah, no, I love it. I really enjoyed that.
And when I'm reading your bio, I'm like, yep, I like that. And I like that. And that's my girl right there. So yeah. And now that we've got a place in Utah, and I'm meeting so many wonderful people like you, it's going to be like, I don't need much of an excuse to go, I'm going to go see Rebecca.
Yeah.
So
we're going to have to do lunch. When are you, so like, when will you be here? Will it be just like, you'll be like bi-coastal, like part-time here,
I think we're going to be, we'll be here definitely like June, July, and August when your steering wheel is melting in Arizona.
Yeah. No, our middle son served in Arizona on his mission. I had never been there, and we picked him up.
Yeah.
We picked him up on July 31st in Arizona.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, well, I'm a person, I tend to run kind of cold. Like I'm always wearing a sweater, even in the summer. So my husband, my other kids got out of the car and they like fell on the ground in a faint. And I was like, this is nice. I like this.
Nice.
So I'm going to have to switch with you, right?
That's an idea.
There's an idea.
Yeah. But other than that, I think we'll just be coming up for Thrive events and anything,
great.
That I'm going to definitely take advantage of the fabulous things they have here in Utah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And, I will tell you, if you happen, I don't know if you would happen to be here next month at all, but like you mentioned, Steve Heinecker and Mormon Book Review.
I wrote it down, everything. Did
you? Yeah, the Jeff
17th
review that's happening the 13th. Yeah, we have this amazing at Broovies in Salt Lake, this incredible screening of this amazing documentary called The Return of Elder Pingree, Memoir of a Departed Mormon. He's an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker. He's a post-Mormon, and he has made this documentary. It's been out for a couple of years, won many, many awards, and we're screening it at Broovies, and he's going to be here for a Q&A. It would be amazing if you happen to be in town and wanted to come. It would be really fun.
We might be. It's not going to take very much. It's like an hour flight from Phoenix.
Oh, that's not bad then. Yeah. No, this is going to be awesome. It starts at 6. It's free to the public, and it's just such a wonderful documentary that we want to make it available to everybody.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
fun
Well,
stuff.
thank you, Rebecca. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And I will let you know this is going live. It's on YouTube and
Oh,
it's
great.
on Facebook Live. So
Okay.
it's already out there for those that
Oh,
have found it.
there
But as
you
soon
go. We
as I
can't
get
take
it,
anything back that we said then. Is that what you're saying?
nope, nope. Yeah,
It's out there.
everybody.
We're doing
Yeah, that's the bad thing about these live podcasts is there
Yeah.
is no editing. It's you're
You
like,
can't
oh,
say
I
cut. Can
think
you
my
just
family said, please don't talk about me. And I was like, yeah, but I did. So
did? I'm sorry. Trying to be subtle, trying to be
exactly.
respectful. I know.
So thank your husband, Tom. And
I will.
I'm going to drag my husband along. We might have to do a foursome somewhere when
Oh,
I
yeah.
get up
No, that
here.
would be awesome.
Go
We would
get dinner.
love it. Let's
That
stay in
would be
touch
so
for
great.
sure. That'd
All
be
right.
great.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh my gosh. Is she not amazing? And I'm telling you, I don't know how the woman has time to like shower or eat. She has got so many things going on and she's just so positive. She's such a positive person. I just love it. I'm so glad I've gotten to know her more. So just want to encourage all of you that have been listening and enjoying She Became Visible. Please, if you are able, donate to the Mormon Discussions podcast. You can find it on shebecamevisible.org if you'd like to make a small donation. And I really highly encourage you to get on the Amazon Smile program because you know you're buying stuff from Amazon. And if you get on the Amazon Smile and make Mormon Discussions your 501c3 to contribute to, then you're contributing and you're getting something, you're getting a twofer on that one. So I really encourage you to do that. So thank you for listening and I will see you again next week. Bye.